I was always the one who called first, checked in, and kept things alive. Then I stopped for a while, and the silence that followed taught me who was really holding these relationships together. You ever look back at your own life and realize you were the glue? Like, not in a proud, self-congratulatory way, but in a quiet, kind of pathetic way? That was me. For a long time, I was the one who reached out first. Every single time. Birthdays? I sent the first text. Reunions? I suggested them. Catching up over a drink or coffee? Always me who initiated it. I even made lists of who I had not talked to in a while, because I genuinely believed that staying connected was my responsibility. It did not feel wrong, exactly. More like inevitable. I told myself, this is just how friendships work. Someone has to make the first move. And maybe I was not being used. Maybe people were just busy, or distracted, or dealing with their own stuff. So I kept trying. My buddy Ray used to say I had a goldfish memory for rejection. He meant it as a compliment, I think. Said I was good at letting things go. But honestly, I do not think I ever let anything go. I just buried it, real deep, and called it being understanding. It was not just friends either. Family, too. My sister Jody always responded like she was surprised to hear from me, even though I had called every other Sunday like clockwork. My cousin Sam would say, "Man, we really need to catch up more," but never followed through unless I pushed. And old college friends? I kept those group chats alive with sheer willpower. I convinced myself this was normal, that maybe I just had more time, more energy, or more heart. I figured people appreciated it, even if they never said so. You do not plant seeds expecting applause, right? But still, sometimes I would catch myself waiting for the reply that never came. For someone to say, "Hey, I was thinking of you." Just once. It was never some dramatic moment that made me stop. No big betrayal. No explosion. It was more like erosion, tiny bits of me getting worn down every time I reached out into the silence. Then one night, I sat there with my phone in my hand, staring at a half-written message to an old friend I had not heard from in months. And for some reason, I deleted it. Not out of spite. Not as a game. I just closed the app, put the phone down, sat in the quiet. I told myself, just give it a week. See who notices. It felt small. Almost nothing. But that was where everything started to change. What I did not realize at the time was that silence has a weight, and mine was about to speak louder than I ever had. The first few days felt strange, like walking around without a jacket in cold weather. Not painful, just exposed. I still picked up my phone out of habit, thumb hovering over old message threads, wondering if I should say something. But I did not. I kept reminding myself, just match their energy. That was the phrase I had heard floating around on some podcast or social clip. Match their energy. Seemed fair. And in theory, fair should feel good. But fair can feel real empty when you have spent your whole life overcompensating. By day 3, I realized just how much I had been the motor in so many relationships. There were no texts, no calls, no funny memes or check-ins or, "Hey, man, just thinking about you" messages. Nothing. The phone stayed quiet except for spam and work emails. Friday came and went. I passed the bar where I used to meet up with Nick, one of my oldest friends. I remembered how I would always be the one to set the time, the place, send the reminder. Without me, the plans just did not happen. I wondered if he had even noticed. Saturday, I saw Jody post photos from a family dinner. A bunch of them together at our aunt's house. I had not been invited, or even mentioned. No message. No "Hey, are you free?" Just smiling faces, clinking glasses, a table full of people I used to think of as mine. I stared at that photo longer than I care to admit. It was not rage I felt, just this dull, hollow ache. Like I had been outside the house for hours before realizing the door had been locked behind me. I kept telling myself this was not a test. I was not playing mind games. I was not trying to see who cared. I just wanted to know what it felt like to stop holding everything up, to let the silence answer back. And it did. Quietly. Relentlessly. By Sunday, the loneliness crept in. I started wondering if I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I had been too intense, too eager, too needy. Maybe they had been pulling away for years, and I was the only one who had not seen it. The doubt gnawed at me. I thought about breaking the silence more than once. Just sending a single text. Just to break the tension. Just to stop feeling like I was drifting farther and farther from people who used to be my entire world. But I did not. I sat with it. and something in that stillness started to shift. What hit me next was not a message from someone I missed, but a notification that would make the silence feel even louder. It was Monday morning when my phone finally lit up. Not a message, not a missed call, just a notification from an old group chat. One of those threads that used to be alive with dumb memes, fantasy football trash talk, late night you up, messages when someone needed to vent or just escape their life for a bit. I tapped it out of habit. Someone had changed the group name to Just the Boys Skull and removed 2 people. One of them was me. No explanation. No heads up. No message afterward. Just gone. I stared at the screen for a while, heart thudding in that quiet, embarrassed kind of way. Not because I needed the chat, but because it confirmed what I had been afraid of for a long time. I was not really part of that world anymore. Maybe I never truly was. That group had gotten me through some of the roughest years of my life. After my breakup with Mallory, when everything felt like it was caving in, they were the ones who kept me afloat. Or at least, I thought they were. Turns out, it might have just been me clinging to the sides of something already sinking. It should not have hit me so hard. I mean, it is a group chat. Digital space. Ghost data. But there was something about it that felt final. Like watching the lights go out in a room you used to call home. I did not say anything. Did not text anyone asking why. I just stared at the screen until it dimmed again. Later that day, I saw Nick's name pop up under people you may know on another app. Which was weird, because he had been on my friends list since high school. I clicked through and realized he had unfriended me. No message. No goodbye. Just another door quietly closed. I started thinking back on all the times I had reached out to him. Planned trips, bought concert tickets he forgot to pay me back for, sent long paragraphs when his dad was in the hospital. Every time, I showed up like clockwork. Not out of obligation, but because I thought that was what friendship meant. Now, he could not even bother to keep me on his list of digital ghosts. I sat there in my apartment, surrounded by the kind of silence that feels alive. My phone face down on the table. The light from the window fading into that weird blue shade that makes everything look colder. And in that moment, I realized something I had never let myself believe. It was not just distance. It was disinterest. But just when I was ready to accept that truth, a message did come in. One that flipped everything I thought I knew on its head. Tuesday, around 9 in the evening, I got a message. It came from Tyler. Now, Tyler was not someone I was especially close with. More like the satellite friend. The guy you always saw at get-togethers, always cracking a joke, always tagging along, but never really opening up. Still, he was in that old circle. The one I had just been quietly pushed out of. His message was short. One line. Hey man, thought you should know. Was not personal. That was it. I stared at it for a while, trying to figure out what he meant. I almost replied with, what wasn't? But before I could type, another message dropped in. This one clearly not meant for me. He had typed fast, must have hit the wrong chat. Or maybe he just forgot to switch over. Either way, what I saw next was one of those raw, unfiltered lines that hits like a slap. He finally stopped reaching out LOL. Took long enough. I sat there frozen. There it was. No need to guess anymore. No overthinking. No wondering if I had imagined the distance. No second guessing if I had been too sensitive. They noticed when I stopped. They noticed, and they laughed. I never responded. I just watched the 3 blinking dots appear, then vanish, then come back again. He must have realized what happened. But I never gave him the chance to explain. I closed the app, turned off my phone, and sat back in the dark. It was not the cruelty that hurt the most. It was the clarity. For years, I had been dragging dead weight, watering plants that had already withered, talking into rooms where no one was listening. And the moment I stepped away, they celebrated, like I had finally stopped being a chore. It made me think of all the birthdays I remembered, the check-ins after their losses, the times I showed up when no one else did. I thought about the long drives to meet up, the times I paid the tab just to keep the night going, the times I swallowed my own hurt to be there for theirs. And now I knew the truth. They did not just forget me. They resented me for not forgetting them first. But nothing could have prepared me for who reached out next, and what they had to say. 2 days passed. No word from Tyler. No follow-up. No apology. I guess he figured silence was safer. I did not blame him. I was done waiting for anyone to say sorry. But then came a message from someone I had not heard from in over a year. Mallory, the ex. The one who left when things in my life got heavy. When my mom was in the hospital, when I had been juggling 2 jobs just to stay afloat, when I had barely enough energy to keep myself together, She bailed. I had not blocked her. I just buried her. Same as I did with every pain I did not have the words for. So seeing her name pop up felt like someone had pulled an old photo out of a drawer you forgot you even had. She wrote, "Hey, I was thinking about you today. I know it's been a long time. Just wanted to say hi. Hope you're doing okay." Part of me wanted to laugh. The other part, deep, bitter, and embarrassingly soft, wanted to believe maybe she meant it. I stared at that message for 10 minutes. What did she want? Closure? Forgiveness? Maybe she saw I had been quiet online lately and thought something had happened. Or maybe she was just bored and wanted to stir the dust. But what really got me was not the message. It was what it stirred up. Because back when we were still together, I used to tell her about how I felt like a ghost in my own friendships. How I felt like I was always reaching, never received. I remember sitting across from her once, in this tiny booth at a cheap diner, and saying, "Sometimes I wonder if anyone would even notice if I stopped showing up." She had looked at me and said, "Of course they would." She said it like it was obvious. And here we were, 1 year, one breakup, and one silence later. And the only one to reach out was her. The irony felt cruel. I did not reply. I was too tired. Not just from her, but from all of it. From the weight of constantly hoping people would prove me wrong. Instead, I closed the message and just sat with the silence again. It had started to feel familiar now. Not comforting, but honest. Because when all the noise died down and all the polite excuses were gone and nobody was checking in unless you were the one dialing the number, you finally heard the truth. You were the bridge. And now that you stopped building it, there was nothing but space. But what I did not realize then was that silence does not just reveal who is gone. It also reveals who never left. It was late. One of those nights where you stare at the ceiling more than the inside of your eyelids. Sleep had not been coming easy lately. Too much swirling around in my head. Old conversations. Missed calls. That damn message from Tyler. The one from Mallory. All of it just looping. I had just about drifted off when my phone buzzed. It was from Jordan. Now, Jordan was not part of the inner circle I had lost. Not someone I talked to every week. But we had history. He was the kind of friend who showed up without asking when my dad passed. The kind of guy who never demanded space in my life, but always made sure there was space for me in his. His message was short. "Hey man, you good?" That was it. 2 words. No agenda. No passive-aggressive guilt. Just concern. I stared at it for a while, longer than I care to admit. Because in that one tiny line, I felt something I had not felt in weeks, like I mattered. I replied, told him I was fine. Lied, of course. He wrote back, "You don't sound fine. Want to grab food tomorrow?" I almost said no. I had gotten so used to the quiet that the idea of actually talking to someone felt like too much. But something in me cracked open a little. I said yes. We met at this greasy little diner on the edge of town. Same one we used to hit up in college. Nothing had changed. Same cracked vinyl booths. Same waitress who still called us sweetheart, no matter how old we got. And I sat across from him, picking at a plate of fries, waiting for the questions, waiting for the pity. But he did not go there. He just talked. Told me about work. His sister's engagement. A weird raccoon that kept showing up on his porch. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a while. Eventually, he looked at me and said, "You've been off the radar." I nodded. He sipped his coffee, then added, "I figured you needed the space. But I've been around, just so you know." I do not think I said anything right away. I just sat there, letting it sink in. Because here was the thing. I had spent so much time mourning the people who disappeared when I stopped reaching out, that I forgot to notice the one person who never needed me to chase him in the first place. Jordan had been there. The whole time. No fanfare. No guilt trips. Just a quiet presence. It hit me then. Some people are not loud about staying. They just do. But the deeper I leaned into that truth, the more another question rose up. What if I had been wrong about more than just the people I lost? That night, after I got home from the diner, I sat on the edge of my bed, shoes still on, jacket still zipped, just sitting. Jordan's words stuck with me. "I figured you needed the space. But I've been around." The more I turned it over in my head, the more it started poking holes in the story I had been telling myself. Maybe not everyone disappeared. Maybe I just spent so long chasing the wrong ones, I forgot to see who was already standing still. That thought was like a gut punch. Not because it hurt, but because it made too much sense. I opened my messages. Not to send anything, just to look. See the patterns. And that was when it really hit me. It was not just that some people never reached out. It was that I had been the one doing all the reaching to the same people, over and over, like a scratched record stuck in the same groove. I had convinced myself they were my people, just because they had been around the longest. But time does not equal connection. Some of those friendships had been hollow for years. I had just been too stubborn, or too afraid, to admit it. I wanted history to count for more than it did. But then there were others. Quiet names buried lower in the list. People who had reached out once, twice, maybe even more, and I had left them on read. Or replied with half interest. Or forgotten altogether. People like Jamie, an old coworker who used to ask how I was holding up after my mom got sick. People like Elise, who once invited me to her little backyard barbecue and I never showed. Not because I was busy, but because I assumed it would be awkward without my people there. I had ignored them. Not maliciously, just carelessly. And now I wondered, had I trained myself to chase the emotionally unavailable because their absence made me feel like I had something to prove? That maybe, if I worked hard enough, someone would finally stay? I did not like the answer that came to mind. Because deep down, it felt true. I had been holding a torch for people who barely noticed the light, while the ones who might have truly cared were left in the shadows. So when I finally decided to send one message, just one, the person who replied did something none of the others ever had. It took me over an hour to decide who to message. I scrolled past the usual names, Nick, Tyler, even Mallory. I paused on them, hovered, but moved on. I was not chasing ghosts anymore. Instead, I landed on Elise. We had worked together for 2 years. Not close, but close enough that we shared inside jokes and swapped music recommendations in between tasks. She had invited me to her birthday last spring. I said I had plans. I didn't. Her last message to me, hey, no pressure, but we're having a few people over this weekend. Would be cool if you came. That was 6 months ago. I never responded. So now, 6 months of silence later, I typed, hey Elise, I was going through some stuff and kind of pulled away from everyone. I just wanted to say I appreciated your invite back then. Sorry I never responded. I sat there, thumb hovering over send, stomach doing that slow churn. I figured she would ignore it. Or maybe reply with a thumbs up. Something polite. Instead, 2 minutes later. Hey, I'm really glad you messaged. I actually figured something was going on, but didn't want to push. I've been there too. Then, you want to catch up sometime? No pressure. Just real talk. I just stared at the screen. It felt like peace. No judgment. No sarcasm. No guilt. Just a quiet opening. And in that moment, something small and honest bloomed in my chest. Because this was what it was supposed to feel like. Not chasing. Not begging. Not proving. Just two people reaching toward each other, with nothing between them but sincerity. And the wildest part? I almost missed it. I had been so focused on who was not showing up that I nearly stepped right over the ones who would. There was no big fireworks moment. No dramatic apology arc. Just a simple exchange and a deeper truth. Connection does not scream. It shows up. And when it does not ask you to earn it. But right when I started to feel like things were finally settling, I got a call from someone I had never expected to hear from again. The name on the screen made my heart skip. Dad. We had not spoken in over 2 years. Not since that fight. The one where he told me I was too sensitive, that I took things too personally. And maybe if I stopped acting like everyone owed me something, I would not feel so alone all the time. I had not screamed. I had just stood there, quiet, as he talked over me. Then I left. And I never looked back. He never called after that. Never texted. Not when I moved apartments. Not when Mom got sick. Not when she passed. Not once. So seeing his name light up my phone now felt like watching a ghost walk into the room. I almost let it ring out. My thumb hovered over decline. But something stopped me. I answered. Hello. There was a long pause. Then a shaky breath. It's me, he said. I heard about your mom. I know I should have said something sooner. His voice was older somehow. Drier. Like the years had stripped something from him too. I did not say anything. I just listened. I saw your cousin last week. She said you're not really around anymore. Not with the family. That you kind of disappeared. I could hear the guilt in his voice. The way it tiptoed around what he was really saying. That I had stopped reaching out. That I had let the rope go slack, and nobody had picked it up from their end. He cleared his throat. I guess I thought, you'd come back eventually. That was when it hit me. They all thought that. Friends. Family. Even him. They all figured I would be the one to come back. To fix things. To smooth it over. To do the work. Because I always had. But I didn't. And now the silence was finally starting to echo back to them. I was just calling to say, "I miss you," he said. "I know I messed things up." I sat with that. And for once, I did not rush to make it easier for him. I did not jump in with "it's okay," or "don't worry about it." I just let the weight of his words hang there. Because that was the thing about silence. Sometimes it buries relationships. But sometimes, it makes people realize what they actually lost. And in the quiet after that call, I finally saw everything for what it was, and everything I had refused to admit until now. After the call ended, I just sat there. No music. No background noise. Just me, in the soft hum of an apartment that used to feel like a waiting room. But now it felt like my own space again. I did not cry. I did not smile. I just felt clear. For the first time in a long time, I was not hoping for a message. Not scanning old threads. Not refreshing apps or checking timestamps. I was just sitting with the truth. The real one. The one I had ignored for years because it hurt too much to name. Some people never cared as much as I hoped they did. Some connections only existed because I fed them. Because I watered the roots. Reached across the gaps. Built the bridges, brick by brick, even when I was exhausted. And when I stopped, they stopped existing. That was the truth. And that truth, while brutal, was freeing. It meant I was not crazy for feeling like I was always the one doing more. It meant I was not being dramatic or too sensitive for noticing who showed up and who only showed up when it was easy. It meant the silence I got back was not a fluke. It was the answer. But here is the twist nobody tells you. When you stop chasing, it is not just about who walks away. It is about who quietly turns around and comes back. Jordan. Elise. A cousin I barely used to talk to who randomly texted me a playlist the next day with a note that said, "This reminded me of you." Small stuff. Honest stuff. The kind of connections I never had to beg for. And my dad? I do not know what will happen there. That bridge is still cracked in places. But at least now he sees it. Now he knows I will not be the one rebuilding it alone. So no, I do not regret going silent. I do not regret giving the same energy I was getting. Because in that stillness, I stopped clinging to what was already gone. And I finally saw who was never really there in the first place. Sometimes, all it takes to know who really cares is to stop calling first.